Hi, everyone, and welcome to this webinar together with Karl Kapp. I am super excited to get started and to have this webinar. And as people are logging in here, feel free to find the chat in the lower right corner. So it'd be great to hear where you're all sitting. We are a fairly international bunch of people here today, and almost 300 registered for the webinar, which is super cool. And while you find the chat, I also highly recommend you, or I would like you to answer a question. To be honest, so my question to you would be: what's a decision you've already made today before this webinar? So this webinar is all about scenarios, making decisions. So again, please add your answers. What's the decision or what's a decision you've done today that maybe affected your day? It can be serious or silly. It's all up to you. But just good to find the chat and get to know you all. Okay, so what beverage I ordered from Starbucks. I did not argue with my stepdaughter. Love it. So I see people joining here from Quebec and LA, Florida, New York. Decided to go and work in a local cafe. That is never wrong to do. I decided I need to make more coffee for sure. Feel free to grab yourself a cup of coffee before we hit things off. This is a session, a 60 minutes session. Very soon, Karl will join stage, and he will talk more about scenario-based training and what to think of when you are creating branch scenarios. And I will also, after his session, I will talk or I will dig into We Are, showing you a live demo of We Are and how easy it is for you to create scenarios and branching with our tool within minutes. We will also at the end have a live Q&A session together with Karl. So feel free to, if you have any questions, this is your chance. And so we'll use some time to really gather some really great questions for Karl. I think we should just get started. Again, you found the chat. We do also have emoji reactions. So if there is anything you particularly like or agree on, it's always good for us to see some engagement. We always like that. There we go. Love it. Again, this is a live session, but the recording will be sent to everyone's email after, and that goes for all our webinars. You do get recordings sent straight after. Good. I think we should just get started. I'll go ahead here. Let me see. There we go. Again, my name is. Let me see. My name is Stine, and I am a senior instructional designer and pedagogue working here at We Are Learning. And this webinar is hosted by us in We Are. And for those of you that wonder what We Are is all about, we are the next generation course authoring tools for all you instructional designers, where you can create branch scenarios, interactive courses, and animation within minutes. And here you also have a QR code. If you want to test out for free, feel free to scan this. Here you have a 14 days free trial with all our features included. So you can really check it out and get a feeling of our tool. And then a bit over to today's topic. And today's topic is about action-first learning, designing scenarios that truly stick. And I guess you've all been there. You have clicked through a course, and the one thing you're thinking of is, oh, here we go again. It often starts with a wall of bullet points. It often starts with learning objectives, and it's a very click next course, very slide-based, text-heavy. And at least I have met a lot of these courses, and you get like a very unmotivated quite fast. And you get tired of it, and you're trying to find kind of, how can I cheat this to kind of complete this the fastest way? That's the hard truth. And at the same time, we live in an AI world, and it's never been more easy to generate content than ever before. You can say that the content part has been way much automated and much faster. But are we creating the same old click next courses that we've always done before, just faster? And I read Karl Kapp's latest book, and he says your learners are not just looking for content; they are looking for meaningful learning experiences that allows them to practice and test their skills, and that is action first learning. And I think also Karl Kapp says it very good here. We must move from simple design, basic slide listing content in bullet points, and passive online or face-to-face lecture. It's time to embrace action-first learning, mindset, and philosophy. And I think this is a good introduction to today's speaker, Dr. Karl Kapp. He's someone I've been following for years, and I'm surprised if you haven't heard about him before. He is a professor of instructional design and technology at Commonwealth University, and he's been in the industry for a very long time. And he's a recognized thought leader in game-based learning, in gamification, and also in instructional design. And I read his book about gamification in college, and I recently read his book this summer, Action First Learning, and it's a great inspiration on how to think differently about learning and how to do something different and something meaningful to engage and activate the learners. So, without any further ado, why don't you join me on stage here, Karl Kapp? Hi.
Great. Yeah, so excited to be here. Thank you for having me. So excited to talk about branching scenario, action first learning, and all good stuff about instructional design. And thank you everyone for joining. Very excited to have everyone here today.
Great. I think we have a fairly international bunch of people, so it's very fun to see. We even have from Stockholm. Myself, I'm sitting in Oslo in Norway. Where are you located, Karl?
So I'm right now in Sullivan County, New York. So I'm in almost to Pennsylvania, about a half an hour from the Pennsylvania border.
Nice. I
Yes.
think let's. I want to give the stage over to you, but before we do so, I want to quickly ask the audience a question, and the question is: what's something you've learned recently without realizing you've been taught? So, is there anything you've learned, but you don't know that you learned it until you get this aha moment? So, feel free to type in the chat. I don't know, Karl. Do you have anything here?
Yeah, so I have a really interesting, I like to barbecue and grill steaks, and so I actually kind of noticed that I now can tell when it's medium. So my wife likes the steak medium, and so now I have learned over time what it feels like, about how much time it has to be on there, what it looks like. So I've gotten kind of all of those. Elements together. So that's kind of like in the casual thing. And then from a work perspective, it's really interesting being a professor where you start to learn about where students are having gaps and where you should fill in information from doing it. I've been doing it for a number of years, let's just say decades. So now I can tell sometimes by the questions, by the reactions, by how they look, how I should adjust my instruction to make it more impactful. So all those are different ways that I've kind of learned something recently.
Yeah, it's definitely learning by doing and action first learning that you kind of experience it and then learn it through experience and through action. But again, you said you figured this out over decades, but I am sure that now with technology and the tools we have, we can now better create these scenarios and these learning experience that you can practice before you even get to those situations. That you don't need kind of the experience in it, but you can actually learn it even before.
Yes. Yeah. The idea is if we can have someone take an action realize what they don't know, then they're more open and more willing to learn. And
Mm,
I think a lot of times with adult learners, especially you say, oh, you're going to go through training. They're like, what training have I know I've been, come on.
mm.
So if you put them in a situation right away where they're like, oh, I don't know the answer to that. Okay, why? What is it? And then they're more open to the information and content that you're going to provide. So that works. And think about the steak example, right? The first couple of times it was well done, and nobody wanted to eat it. So those are kind of the learning experiences that we have. We don't have decades for our learners in corporate situations or even academics. So action first learning kind of condenses that and allows it to happen very quickly.
Yeah, condense it is a great description of it. I see her, Britta. It says, "I've learned the hard way that my car is absolutely exactly the same length as my new garage." I love it. Okay, I'm gonna give the word over and the stage over to you, Karl. I'll stop sharing and go off, and I'll join you after your presentation.
Oh, fantastic. So I will start sharing my screen. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to share some PowerPoints that I've put together. And I'm going to show you. Oops. And hide this. Okay, so branching scenarios for learning success. So, first of all, if you want to keep in touch with me, follow me on LinkedIn. I'm easy to find. If you have access to LinkedIn Learning, I have a whole course called Designing Scenario-Based Learning. Most organizations have LinkedIn Learning, so it's free for you. Most libraries have it, so it's free for you, so you can check it out there. And then, of course, the book Action First Learning. So please follow me. I have lots of links there. I even have a link for a whole curriculum on Action First Learning, and it's free. So what are we going to talk about today, right? So we don't have a whole lot of time. So Sina already gave us our Action First Learning introduction, right? We had to think about what was something that we kind of learned over time. So what are we going to discuss now? Well, one is, what is Action First Learning? A brief history of branching. I think that's important to understand the context and how we should develop. And then talk about what's the value of branching for learning. So some people will challenge us, hey, it takes too long to develop branching scenarios. We don't have time for it. Just give them the content. They'll be fine. So we need some ammunition to push back on that kind of thinking. And then Stine is going to show you what it looks like in action. Like, yeah, it's good to hear about it in theory, Dr. Kapp, but how does it really work? How do you really develop for it? So we're going to talk about that. So the first thing I want to talk about is my philosophy of action first learning, build up over time. But basically the idea from my experience and from my observations is that if you start a learning session with like not a lot of action, then it's hard to get people to take action later on. If you start a learning experience without people doing something, then they get in the mindset of not doing. And lots of people, it's very difficult to get people online for training or to get people to come to a classroom for training, because this works online, digital, in-person, synchronous, asynchronous. But that's precious time, and organizations don't want to give up that time. People don't want to give up that time. So when we make people do things immediately, it's kind of like forcing them to practice. And if they don't get it right, then they figure out what's wrong and then they practice more. And that's very helpful. So how does it work? Well, there's a trigger action. So maybe you start with a question, as we did today. Maybe you start with a decision in branching scenario kind of situation. Maybe you ask the learners something to do something to solve a problem. And so there's this trigger action, and then the learner has to apply their knowledge. And this is where, if it's well designed, the learner goes, I didn't know that. Okay. So how can I learn this, right? And they can learn it through feedback, through instruction, maybe social interactions with other learners, and even some kind of an emotional impact, like, wow, I'm kind of upset, I didn't know that, or that's kind of interesting, I didn't know that, why not, or why is the response that way? So we can get somebody involved. And then finally, reflection. There is no learning without reflection, only experience. So if we really want the learners to learn something, to be able to apply it to what they're doing in the future, we want them to reflect on the experience that they have. So a big part of action first learning is this idea of reflecting on the experience. So let's look at this, how it relates to, in the book, I talk about 9 different ways of thinking about action first learning, but let's talk about one of the ways, which is branching scenarios. And to me, it's really interesting to look at branching scenarios through time and look at kind of not necessarily learning, but education or entertainment, and see what we can steal from the folks that build these for entertainment. So one of the very first branching book ever is this book in the 1930s by Doris Webster and Mary Alden Hopkins called Consider the Consequences. And it was written in the 1930s, and it was written, and these two women were pioneer for women's rights and women's right to make decisions, and really kind of a fascinating story behind this book. And they have 3 characters that you can go through the book and make decisions. First one ever. So that was in the 30s. So this isn't like a brand new thing. And then in the 1970s, like 78, multi-user dungeons came out. So you probably remember those, where it was all text on a screen, and you would type in like, it would ask you, do you want to look left or right? And you'd be like, a left. And there's like, slowly you turn left, and standing in the corner, you see fangs reflected in the monster, and you're like, oh my goodness. And so it gave you a choice of which way you wanted to look. Very, very text heavy, very scripted branches, very didactic as you go through. And then in 1979, everybody kind of knows the good old choose your own adventure books, where you have lots of different adventures. This one has 20 different endings. The one I'm holding up here, House of Danger. But that really kind of accelerated the craze. And the interesting thing about that is, one, Montgomery and those actually credit Doris and Mary with kind of the concept. But these books also all read like you. So it says, you are standing here, you are on your way down to the lab. So it was all about what actions you were going to take, which is really critical when we think about creating a branching simulation. And then we had something like Red Dead Redemption, which is an open world. The reason why I mention it here is because your decisions in that game can make you wanted by the law, or make you a hero, make you a person that helps others. So every decision you make in that game slowly moves your character into being an outlaw or into being a hero, which is really kind of interesting. And that was clear in 2010. Now, looks like I forgot HyperCard for hyperlinking. So moods didn't have linking, and we didn't have linking for a while. And then HyperCard came along. We're like, oh, okay, now we can link from one place to another, which is really important when you think about branching scenarios. And then the final one that I want to talk about is Black Mirror's episode Bandersnatch, which is kind of a meta episode where Stefan Butler is taking the book Bandersnatch, which is an interactive storybook, and creating an interactive video game set in the 1980s, 84, I think, and to go through that. And it talks about decisions and predetermination, and it gets rather heavy, but really kind of interesting elements about branching. And so here's kind of the branching that Doris talks about, Helen's choices, Jed's choices, Saunders' choices, and how you go through the book. So, and choose your own adventure. I really like, I don't know if you have a favorite one, but mine is Inside UFO 5440, which actually gamed the gaming. So one of the endings in the Inside UFO 5440, which is a good ending, is not even linked to anything. You just have to page through the book to find it. I mean, kind of wild. And then they made House of Danger into an actual game. So what does it all mean from learning? Like, why is this effective for learning? Why are we as humans drawn into this branching idea? And one of the reasons is because of what's called self-determination theory, which is a theory of motivation, which means we are motivated by things like our ability to make autonomous decisions, meaning we want control over the decisions that we make. So that's a huge driver in looking at motivation of why people are involved with things. But other things are immediate action. So if you introduce somebody to branching scenario from the get-go. Like you walk into your training and it automatically says, hey, your boss just embezzled $10,000. What's the first thing that you should do? Right. And all of a sudden you have my attention. You didn't bore me with the learning objectives. You didn't tell me, you just said, hey, what would you do? So now I have to take immediate action. And then you can come back and say, yes, that action was correct, or no, that action wasn't correct. You can fill in the details as you go along. So immediate action is one value. Another is the immersion of the experience. If the experience is designed correctly, it feels like you're there. You're at the construction site. And I would urge anyone developing branching scenarios to think all five senses, right? So you might not be able to do smell. We don't have, smell-o-vision yet, or smell computers yet, or we do, but they're not widespread. But sound is something that we can use. So on this, when I look at this construction site, we also put in the ever annoying sound of backing up machinery, right? It's always in the background. Because why? Because it's always in the background. Like if you go to a construction site, everybody's going everywhere backwards, beeping all the way. So think about adding sounds, sights, slamming of a door if somebody's mad, slamming their fist into the desk, having the sounds of beeping and buzzing. Like those are real sounds that can immerse somebody in the decision making and in that particular experience. The other thing is realistic storytelling. So one of the things that we want to do, and I'll talk about this a little bit later, is we want to ask the subject matter experts for some stories. And then those become what we use in the instruction. So what story, so you want to say to the person, like, what are you doing on the job? Like, what stories, how have people been successful? How have people not been successful? Tell me some stories about that stick out in your mind about working on a construction site, right? Those are the things that catch people's attention and that are really effective for branching stories. And then they can also highlight delayed impacts. And this is important. So if, for example, I'm an inspector and I'm supposed to inspect maybe buildings, and one day I'm having a bad day and I don't feel like inspecting, and so I just take a shortcut and I sign off on the building. Well, maybe there was faulty steel in that building or faulty concrete. Well, over time, that will have an impact, but it might be 20, 30 years before my sloughing off on my inspection results in disaster, right? The building collapsing. But if I do a branching scenario, I can say, okay, do you want to inspect this or not? Somebody clicks no, I don't want to inspect it. And then you can go, 20 years later, and you can show the building collapsing. So you can show delayed impacts. You can show where somebody maybe sloughed off a customer and the customer never buys from you again, right? So those are things that are impacts of your actions or behaviors, but they're not always evident. And so by using a branching scenario, you can accelerate time and make those things evident, which is really important. And also, the thing I like the most about branching scenarios is failure is an option. There's actually a bunch of research that shows that humans, we learn from failure. In fact, there's one really interesting research study that shows that there's more electrical activity in our brain when we don't know an answer to something than when we do know the answer to something, right? Because we're struggling. Like, do we know, is that the answer? Well, what could it be? Well, let me try to figure that out. And if we design a branching scenario with specific failure points in the scenario that we know happen, we can shortcut those particular failures, right? So people say, the example I always give is people say, oh, I don't need to practice. I've been a salesperson for 20 years. I know everything about sales, right? So I don't need to practice. Even though we know sports stars, from football stars in the United States to football stars internationally, they practice every day. Well, if you're at the international stage playing football, shouldn't you know what you're doing? Yeah, and the answer is yes, but you practice it all the time. Well, if you're an excellent salesperson, shouldn't you be practicing your skills and looking out for areas that will be failure? And a branching scenario can show you what failure looks like safely. So safe failure should definitely be an option in branching scenarios. Now, another thing about stories, as we're talking about, is that we as humans have a natural affinity for narrative construction. In fact, we know facts better when they're in a story than when they're in a bulleted list. I always say bulleted lists don't exist in nature, but stories do. In fact, even legal arguments are rated as more convincing if they're couched in a story. So, one of the things that we need to do is help our learners build a repertoire of stories that they can apply to situations. In fact, there's one line of research that says the difference between novices and experts when they approach a problem is that the expert goes through almost kind of like a file folder system of similar incidences. And they say, oh, okay, well, what's happening here is very similar to this, what happened in 1971 when this happened. So let me try this approach. Where a novice will go, well, according to the heuristic algorithm that I've been taught, step one is this, step two is this, step three is this, and they miss things. And so if we can create scenarios that are realistic, that are impactful, that are based on stories from subject matter experts, we can then build up expertise. Clark Aldrich calls this competence and confidence. So we know what to do and we know how to do it, which can be really exciting from a learning perspective. So, how do we become a story connoisseur? Well, observe how movie makers, television directors, novelists, how do they craft a story? Right? We're not writing the great novel, but we are using evidence in stories for learning. And don't think that your learning is not in some way competing with everything that's going on around us, right? We've got our phone right here. We could grab our phone and go through training. You've probably all been through training where the only goal in the training for you was to hit next as fast as you possibly could to get to the end of the training. But if you have to make decisions in the context of a story that's meaningful to what you're doing on the job, that makes a difference. So think about it. So, for example, a lot of stories start with an average everyday person, and something happens to them, and then they have to react to that, and that's kind of a learning process. And if you think of television shows, like I always think of TV dramas, detective dramas, right? The story is so structured, like, okay, there's a crime is committed, they figure out the suspect, they then book the suspect, and all that stuff. So sometimes those shows will lead you to believe that person X is a suspect, but they're not really a suspect, right? So they know the trope, the story trope, and they change it a little bit. As designers of branching scenarios, we have to know those tropes. We have to change them a little bit to keep the learner interested. So when you get with the subject matter expert, ask to hear stories. Ask them, oh, give me a story about this, or give me a story about this, or tell me a story about that, and collect those stories. And then ask story type questions, right? So when you're on the job and you're talking to a customer, is there a plot involved? Like, what's the plot? What are you trying to accomplish when you talk to the customer? Who are the characters that you interact with every day? Maybe not people, but are they engineers? Are they customers? What kind of customers are they? What's their backstory? Right? Find that out to have a rich experience in creating your scenario. Now, what can branching learning teach? All kinds of things like decision making. So, should I do this or should I do that? And we know that AI can give us a lot of content, but it's not so good at helping us make a decision. So let's use branching scenarios, making leadership decisions or communication decisions. It can also teach us empathy. What would you say to this person who's upset that their significant other is sick, yet they have to be at work, right? How do you help them with that? And that's for the American people in the audience. In other countries, you don't have to be at work if someone's sick. But anyway, self-reflection, self-assessment. This is the reflection part. After you make a decision in a branching scenario, you could ask people, why'd you make that decision? What do you do? I created a branching scenario one time. And at the end of it, it was called zombie sales apocalypse. And You had to try to sell a product. And if you didn't sell, every time you answered incorrectly, the person you were talking to became more and more infected as a zombie. And so if you didn't do it correctly, they eventually became a zombie and chased after you. But at the end of that, to build in reflection, we had an interviewer come up and say, hey, it was pretty rough in there. And I know you had to deal with a lot of situations. Tell me how you handled this, or tell me why you said this, right? And so it was a way to force the learner to reflect on what was happening and to assess their own skills or elements. And then situational awareness. There are situations, maybe in a factory floor or dealing with a customer, where you have to be aware of your surroundings, like what's going on, what's happening. And branching scenarios are a great way to do that and to help people understand that. And then finally, diagnosis and troubleshooting. And I want to point out, a lot of people think scenarios are like two people talking to each other. Like that's a branching scenario. But you can also have branching scenarios troubleshoot. Here's a piece of machinery. What's the first thing that you would do? I would click here. Okay, you're getting the sound. Now what would you do, right? And you could guide people down the path of effectively troubleshooting, or a path of sort of troubleshooting, or a path of you're not troubleshooting at all, right? So you can do the branching. It doesn't always have to be a people-to-people communication. And that's an important thing to consider as well. And then 3 questions I want you to ask yourself and others when you design a branching scenario. The first question is, what does the learner need to do? Not what they need to know. Too often, subject matter experts or even designers of instruction say, what do you need to know to do this job? Let's flip that. Let's say, what does the person need to do this job? What observable behavior can I see? And then design the scenario around eliciting that observable behavior. And you're like, well, let's say that you're making a decision on a mortgage loan or some kind of loan. You might say, well, they don't, all that goes in their mind, like whether or not to their credit score and all that kind of stuff. But at the end, that loan officer makes a decision. That's what the learner has to do then. They have to make a decision. Maybe a lot of the decision process is in their mind, but at the end, they have to make a decision. So your branching scenario should be at the end, they have to make a decision. And then what are the most critical decisions? Like they make lots of decisions. We can't teach every single decision. What are the ones that are deal breakers? What's the ones that make or break what's happening? Those are critical decisions. You want to think about those critical decisions, and those are the ones you want to highlight in the training. And then, where do most people fail? If we can capture the failure and correct it in a branching scenario, we're in pretty good shape. So those are 3 questions that you should consider when you start to develop a branching scenario. And the other thing about branching scenarios that sometimes I get pushback on is, hey, Karl, those are really overcomplicated. And when I do a branching scenario, it looks like this. And wow, I'd love to do that. But man, I don't have time to do all these branches. This is like 32 different, I can't do all these branching. Well, you don't have to get this elaborate every time. You can take shortcuts. You can give the illusion of more choice than exists and still reach your instructional goal. So one of the things that you might want to do is do a path like this. So we start out with the learning situation. Then the learner has to make a decision, and red would be a wrong decision. Yellow would be, it's okay. And green is the best decision. You could then give feedback for the wrong and the yellow decision, and then have somebody end up all in the same place. So that's one way that you can do this. Now, keep in mind, if you expect people to take the simulation branching scenario over and over again, this is not a good tool, right? But most of the time, we're just developing training that somebody's going to take it for their yearly compliance training, or they're going to take it one time. They're not going to go back and do other choices. If they are, you have to branch it a little bit differently. I'm not telling you this is the only way to do it. I'm telling you this is a way to do it. But this is one way. And another way to do it is this way. So you start, if somebody does something wrong, you send them right back, right? Hey, try that decision again. Why would you do that? Well, because we don't want the learner to go too far down the path when the answer is incorrect. So we may want to maybe end the scenario, go back and start over again, or give feedback as we are here in the yellow example. So my point about showing these different elements of branching, and this is perfectly valid, is that be strategic about how you develop it. And most of the time, it's going to be a mixture, right? You might have one answer go back, everybody come to the same place, but then you may have other answers go to different places. So don't get locked into one branching scenario methodology. Think about being flexible as you're doing the branching. Now, the final thing I want to talk about is obstacles. One is they're overly complicated. We already covered that. And the second is whenever I see 4 choices on the screen, I always go, I would never say that. Like, who would say that? As a designer, you kind of have to guess. So that's a problem. Like, I would never say that. So sometimes that doesn't work in terms of the typed answers. And then the other thing is whenever I go through a branching scenario, I always choose the longest response, and it's almost always the right one, right? Because you're adding new information, you're adding information. So trying to keep those consistent is important. And then finally, a branching only design, where a lot of times that you have this branching tool, you go in there and you can't do things like clickable maps or drag and drops or whatever. You're stuck in just branching. Other tools will allow you to do that, but from a design perspective, you want to think about adding other elements into that branching scenario. It doesn't have to be 100% branching. You can mix it up. And so to overcome some of these issues, I'm going to turn it back to Stine, who's going to talk to you about what We Are does in terms of helping create branching scenarios and overcoming some of these obstacles. So Stine, let me turn it back over to you.
Thank you so much. This was great, Carl, and I definitely learned a lot. And I totally agree with you with your last slide. You're trying to. It's very easy to kind of see what is the correct answer when you get 3 different options. And I also think your examples with the branching scenarios, how complex they can be, but also how easy they can be. It's good, good to see that there's definitely a variety. And I'm also going to show this to you in VR how easy it actually can be. So
Great,
thank you
fantastic.
so much. I'll continue on here, but for all of you here joining, I would also like to say we're going to have a Q&A and interview call after my short demo of VR. So stay tuned for that. I definitely see some great questions here, and I do have some questions myself. So if you have any questions for Karl, please write it in the chat, and I'll make sure to ask him after my demo of We Are and how easy it is for you to create branching scenarios and interactive stories, as we call them in We Are, within minutes. But before diving straight into We Are, I'll quickly show you an example of what you can create.
Today, you'll step into the shoes of a team member behind the counter.
Hi there, I'd like a Chick-fil-A deluxe sandwich and a medium waffle fries and a large sweet tea, please.
Got it. A sandwich, fries, and tea.
Throughout this course, we'll cover 5 key learning moments that help you master your role.
Hi there. I'm trying to remodel my kitchen, but I'm overwhelmed by all the cabinet styles. Can you help me figure out what would work best for my space? All right, team. We need to finalize our strategy for the upcoming project. Any ideas on how we should approach this?
Okay, so a sneak peek on what you can create. So let's us just dive straight into VR, and I'll show you how easy it is to play around. So I'll just go ahead and share a tab here. There we go. So might looks a bit familiar to you. Looks similar to Karl's slides. Again, here we are in our node map. I'll zoom out so you see how it works. super intuitive and easy to work with. And here you have the different notes that you can write in. But I have already prepared some examples for you that I would like to show you. So why don't we start with a regular dialogue node, meaning a character talking. So here I have added my script. So I want the character to give an introduction to this demo. Let's see how it looks like without me animating the character, just generating script and getting an AI voice.
Hi there. In we are. I can be whoever you want me to be with all sorts of emotions. I can even be anywhere you'd like. And the best part? You get to decide what I say.
Okay, so here I've added my scripts. Of course, you have help from AI to improve your writing, and you can, of course, just type directly into the notes. But the fun part is to make her come to life. Now she was standing quite still, and if I want to make her move, you can always hit this auto animate button where AI will do most of the work for you. So AI will listen to the script and suggest different animations. So why don't we just check out what AI created for us now?
Hi there. In we are. I can be whoever you want me to be with all sorts of emotions.
And suddenly she's moving a little bit. But you can, of course, also fine tune this to your liking. So again, you can double click on her idol, her body posture, and decide her emotions. So she can have all sorts of feelings. She can be furious. She can even be intoxicated. She can be in front of her computer. Yeah. It's all up to you how you would like her to behave. And of course, it's also very fun to play around with different expressions. Again, she can have all sorts of emotions. Let us just go for happy. The track above here you can also add different gestures. So I'll just show the library to you. Again, if you want different gestures, different things she's gonna say and do, this is where you'll be going. And this library is fairly big, extensive. And again, I'm sure you will find your favorite. So all sorts of gestures to choose from here. You can also search for your favorites. But I think the suggestion made from AI is fairly good. So when I'm happy with this node, I just go out and now I have her animated. It's also very easy to have characters talk together. So let us just meet Eric. He's in a therapy session. Yeah, let us just see how it looks like.
Now, Eric, I want you to tell me all about last week.
Well, it started okay, I guess, but yesterday was not a good day.
So Eric is having a hard time. Here you see dialogue with two characters. It's transitioning smoothly between characters, and of course they can also be sitting and not having a good day. Okay, so one other thing that is also very fun to play around with is the different locations. So here again we have Eric. He's at the doctor's.
Now, Eric, how are you feeling today?
But then maybe Eric is ready to be moved to operation to have an operation room to get the surgery. So here again, you can play around with different idols. I'll go ahead and change him from, at the moment he is sitting, but he can of course be lying in bed having pain, and he can also of course be lying in a hospital bed. So now he's in his hospital bed. I can also repositioning him a bit and also change the location. So I'll search for one of my already uploaded backgrounds. Here we go. And suddenly within seconds, he is now somewhere else, ready for surgery. So if I hit this play now.
Now, Eric, how are you feeling today?
So he's not feeling great. Him either. So that's how easy it is to play around with locations, emotions, and also different idols. And it's done within seconds. Okay, I think we should just move on here a little bit. And now I want my character, Stine, to guide us a little bit. I also do have a surprise for Karl, so pay attention.
Okay, so let's move on. I have someone I would like you to meet. Hello over there, Karl.
Oh, you mean me? Hi there, and great to see all of you. Attendees from all around the world. Love it.
Wow, cool. It's almost like we are in your book. But enough about me. How are you, Karl?
I am all good, thank you. And I must say, I'm excited for this webinar.
I could not agree more. Let's move on to see more features in We Are.
So yeah, Karl, I haven't even seen it, so it's very cool to see real life characters come to life in We Are. So I had fun creating this. Cool. Okay, so again, we're talking about branch scenarios. That's what we're talking about here today. And again, it's super easy to do this in We Are yourself. Here you have an example, 3 different options. You either need to click on A, B, or C. I'll preview it to you so you see. And in this example, I've also added a digital coach or a narrator giving me feedback on the different responses I click on.
I'm not sure if your product is worth the price. I understand. Price is important, of course, but compared to most competitors, we're actually more affordable.
That's a solid point. But remember, value isn't only about being cheaper.
Okay, so here again, I got 3 different options, either A, B, or C, and based on what I just clicked on, I'll continue on that path or that branch. So again, if I want to add more of these, you just click on response, and here you have a third option. So it's very straightforward to play around with, and you can of course also reposition them however you prefer. Cool. Okay. So, as also Karl touched upon, you kind of are looking for those responses with the longest text. They are often the ones that are correct. But we have a take on this, and in We Are, you can use AI. So, as an instruction designer, you can kind of create the dialogue, you create the branching scenarios, as you can see here. I'm going to show you an example. This is an onboarding course or an onboarding story saying hi and welcome to this new employee. And then the character is saying, okay, what are you most excited about? And here I said, okay, I think there are three different outcomes here. It's either meeting your employees or the task you're about to start doing, or is it a lunch, for example? So based on what I'm saying, AI will route me to the correct branch, meaning it feels like free speech with the characters. I'll show it to you how it looks like.
We are so excited to have you on board. Before we get started, what are you most excited about as you're getting ready to start here?
And the video stops, and I need to say something, either say something or type to be able to proceed. So it's not like I can click play and go and grab myself a cup of coffee. I actually would need to engage and interact in this story to proceed. So let's give it a try. The food, of course.
Love it. Fair enough. You've clearly got your priorities straight. Good food makes everything better, right?
So what happened behind the scenes is that AI said, okay, she said something about food that's it's mostly, I think it lands on lunch. That's most similarity to it. So it goes on the lunch branch and then route me to the correct branch in this story. We often see when we talk to AI characters that the conversation never stops. So an important factor for us here is that the instruction designer have full control over this dialogue, but the learner only sees a microphone and really needs to interact to be able to proceed. We also have a no match, of course. So if you don't hit any of these 3, you end up in a no match, and you can decide if the story continue on or it loops back again. And you also set the similarity. So how similar should my reply be so I land on that specific note? We have also toggled on something called AI rephrase. So when the character gives me feedback, he will kind of adjust what he's saying to the conversation, because we don't know what the learner is actually saying. So he will adjust and the conversation will feel like it flows naturally. So that's kind of our main two interactive elements. We do have the visible buttons, but we do also have response notes that we are super proud of. But then ending my demo, I just want to quickly also show you another scenario. This is on a construction site. It's about safety, and it gives you a good feeling of what you can create in VR. So it's all about how to always use a helmet and be safe at work. We have also added a video introducing the story.
When an accident happens, every second counts. That's why knowing your safety procedures isn't just important, it can be life-saving. Let's see what happens when a worker falls and how quick, informed actions make all the difference.
So this is the introduction to the scenario, and this can, of course, be a video of you where you introduce it.
A worker is down. You're the first on the scene after a fall near the scaffolding. You don't know what happened, but you need to act fast. Your actions now could save his life. Let's get started.
And here, again, interactivity or scenario, it doesn't need to be branching all the time. Here we have also added different hotspots. Okay, what to check for when you see an injured coworker. Okay, you need to check breathing, you need to check airways, and you also need to check if he's responding. So again, now I clicked all the different hotspots and I can continue.
Okay, good job. Now, in a scenario like this, would you be confident about giving CPR? Let me show you how to perform a correct CPR.
And we have added a video on how to do CPR. I'll just quickly go to the next.
I need to call an ambulance, but what was the emergency number again? Let's try 911. Oh, come on, pick up.
This is 911. My name is Kayla. What has happened?
And now I get 3 different options. What's the best thing to say in this situation?
Okay, John, is the person conscious?
And now I have this open response. I need to respond to be able to proceed. Yes, I think so.
Okay, you sure? Can you ask him what his name is?
And then the story continues on. So this is just a sneak peek of what you can create in VR. It's very easy tool to work with. This is the node map. Again, you move or you add nodes yourself and you add different responses. So here you have 3 different outcomes. You can continue adding and just looping them all back together. So this is a similar example that Karl showed us where we have 3 different outcomes, but they're all kind of looping back together in the same path. So we're all about making creating learning, making learning easier for you, and also making learning more engaging and interactive. Cool. I think for now, I think we're going to stop the demo there. Now I want to use the rest of my time to get Karl back on screen. But before I just want to quickly also say that we do have, let me just see here. There we go. For those of you that are curious on testing out VR, you can go to our website and create a free trial. So in the upper right corner, you can create a free trial, 14 days, no credit card, and you'll see all the feature and really test out the tool. So I highly recommend you checking that out. Okay, great, Karl. Thank you. Great to see you. Okay,
I love the avatar.
Yeah, you're happy with with your
good.
avatar.
Yeah.
I had fun playing around yesterday. Nice. Okay, so let's move over to the Q&A session. So again, we probably have some questions already in the chat, but I did notice one very interesting question from Scott. So I think I would love to touch upon that as well. It's a question to you, Karl. If we are not communicating learning objectives up front, I did mention that in the beginning that I often see courses, they start with the learning objectives, which is which is good. Like, it's good to know why do we need to take this course? Why am I here? But how do you suggest we include learning objectives if we don't include it in black and white?
Right.
And
Yeah, that's a great question. And Scott also asked about how much information do we give, right? So I think that one of the things that we've missed is adult learners come to learning with a lot of knowledge already. And so if we start telling them things that they already know, they're going to be like, so if we start with an objective, I always call them objections, so I have to be careful, a learning objective, we say, you're going to learn 5 ways to close a sale. And a good salesperson goes, I know 6. This is a waste of my time. But if you said, do you know the number 1 way sales are closed in our organization? Now you've got my attention, right? And now if you're making me decide something, then I have to actually commit to that. And like, is that really the right answer? Is that not the right answer? And then once I get somebody's attention with the question of what they want to, hey, maybe even a better question is, wouldn't you like to make more sales? Well, yeah, I would. Or wouldn't you like your job to be faster and more efficient? Well, yeah, I would. Well, here's some software training. So by asking those questions and setting up the learner, then you can fill in the information as you go along, and the learner is going to be interested in what's happening. So as designers, we've got to be do our due diligence to say, yeah, these are novice learners. They don't know anything about this topic. So starting them cold, probably not the best idea. Or these learners, they've had a little bit of experience. They've been on the job for a while, so we can start them here. But if you look at how entertainment catches our attention, it's almost always not with walls of text. Today, this television show is about 2 detectives, and the detectives are going to try to find a bad guy, and they're going to see where the bad guy committed the bad guy crimes. And let's take a, no, it's like, here's a crime. Let's figure out who did it. So here's the situation. Let's figure out what's doing. And there's actually some really interesting research that says that learners really don't pay attention to the words "you will learn." Like they don't care. They're like, how does close a sale? They're like, okay, I get it. It's really super important for us as designers to know what the learning objectives are and to design to these objectives. Less important to let the learners know. Now, at the end, as part of reflection, we've got to tell them what you learned. Like, because some people don't get, like, oh, what did I learn? Oh, okay, I got it now. And I even like to ask them to transfer. Okay, based on what we've learned in this branching scenario, how would you transfer that to an actual situation? That helps the learners then see, oh, this is where it links. And so I think that's an important element to address. But yeah, great questions.
Agree. It's almost like you can kind of reveal or experience the learning objectives as you go, in a way.
Yeah. So I was reading Colleen's statement. Colleen, look, Will Tallheimer has done a whole thing on learning objectives and how they're not as effective as we would like to think they are from the learner's perspective. Stine, sorry, could you ask me that question?
No, I was just saying that when you, in regards to learning objectives, I don't state them up front, but you kind of experience it. You kind of it kind of evolves bit by bit in a course.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, you could do them in forms of questions. You could do them halfway through.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff.
I see we do have some really great questions. I'm a bit cautious of time. I think maybe we should take one more before we round up this session. I see here one about balancing the scenario and the depth of options. What do you prefer, giving immediate feedback or at the end of a scene? That's a really good question. What do you prefer, Karl?
Yeah, so I think it depends on what you're actually teaching. So for example, if you are, if they're doing something that this is like critical and you cannot mess this up, then you stop right away. You give feedback right away. If it's something that you want to see if maybe you can recover from, then that's another way that you can do it. So those are a couple different ways that you can think about how that design is going to impact what you really want to do. And again, we can't give up what we as instructional designers are responsible for, right? We're responsible for knowing the audience, figuring it out, and telling how it's going to work. So we definitely need to know our audience and know our content, and then make a decision about, oh yeah, they need feedback along the way, because otherwise they're not going to get it. The other thing you could do is you could do graduated feedback, right? So you could do, like I play a game, for example, there's 3 levels of help. The first level of help is, look over in the general direction of the forest. Okay, it helps me, but not, real helpful. The second level of help is, it's to your left, look over there. And the third level of help is, it's under the rock, you idiot, just pick up the rock, right? So, but I can decide, like, do I want just to pick up the rock, or which level of help? So that's another way that we can scaffold in the learning process through our branching scenarios.
Great answer. The scaffolding was the first thing I got in mind. Great. I think the chat is we definitely have some great questions here, but I think maybe Karl, you can answer while I'll round up this session. And I guess the conversation also, Karl, can continue on LinkedIn. So feel free to connect with you there as well. Here you also have a photo of Karl's latest book. I highly recommend all of you checking it out. And again, thank you, Karl, so much for your insights. If there's any other questions to Karl, or if Karl wants to, yeah, there we go. And I have a link to the book as well. So again, thank you so much, Karl, for your insights. Just rounding up this session, we do have some other upcoming webinars. So if you're keen on learning more about We Are, if you want to see more into details, how you create a story step by step, feel free to join me 1st of October, where I will go through We Are very basic and show you exactly what you need to create a story within seconds. And also, of course, all our webinars will be recorded. So if the time is not perfect, you will always get the recording sent to your email after. Good. Also, we would highly appreciate if you want to follow us on social media, on LinkedIn or Instagram. And then this is my last slide. I just want to say thank you. Thank you again, Karl, for a really great session. Again, if you want to book a demo, if you want to meet with someone from us to talk more, feel free to scan this code and we will schedule a demo to show you more of our tool. Good. Okay. I hope you are feeling inspired. I wish you all a great rest of your day and hope to see you another time. Okay, everyone. Bye-bye.